Born in Hebron on November the 7th, 1931. And was born at home as a middle one of 11 children, eh? Dr. Jim Carmuth was a doctor. I guess he lived pretty well the whole family. Well, from the first thing that I really remember, well, I'd be 4 years old then, is when Sterling, my brother, was born. I remember well when he was born. And we just grew up on an old farm there and worked. There's lots of work. Even when he was big enough, I remember carrying water for my mother. We had a pitcher pump in the kitchen, but the leather had gone in the plunger, and one winter it wouldn't hardly work at all. So I used to carry water up with 2 5-pound kettles, eh? And she'd wash all day Monday, and I'd carry water all day to the. I remember that. I'd be about 5, I suppose. And there's always, as you're growing up, all kinds of work on an old farm. And you worked from the time you could walk, but there's always lots of chores to do. It's just when you get home, get your clothes changed, get at the chores. Water the cattle in the wintertime is chop the. It always watered the cattle in the brook, and chop the ice of the brook and get a place for the cattle to drink, and clean the barn, put the hay down, and a lot of time in the wintertime it didn't. A lot of the cows wouldn't be milking, eh? But I mean, you had to milk before you go to school, you'd be milking cows. You had to learn to milk cows when you're 4 or 5 or 6 years old. Oh, just a regular, not a small farm, just a roundabout farm, I guess. It's about 25 to 30 cattle, and always had quite a few pigs. Always raised a few pigs. Sold swifts, and always killed beef and pork and stuff for the winter. I always had a beef for the fall, and pig for the fall to kill. Yeah, there's two older houses put together, eh? And they ended up, they moved another house, part of another house, up to where it sat in Hebron, and put them together, eh? And I remember when they just the one we moved up was a little lower than the other one, and I remember Father hiring a fellow to jack it up to make the floors even, because it was a high step going from the kitchen to the dining room. Eh? I remember when they raised that up, and then they put a cement wall under it. Eh? And they had the cement walls in back before I can remember on the main part of the house. Eh? Summertime, there's always a garden, lots of gardens to do. Weed gardens, and pick potato bugs, and pick berries, pick a lot of berries. Well, you just had to play by yourself. Well, after I got big, I used to make carts, eh? They cut the wheels off of a log, eh? And then put a hole through the center of it, for an axle, and cut them for wheels, make carts. And but we used to get. I remember getting my older brother, and I getting the new hand sleds one year. That really something to get new hand sleds. I know the year we got them, the day that the Christmas Day, it rained hard, and the road iced out. The roads was all ice, but we went up the hand sleds, where they could go some fast down those hills on the ice, But we come back home about noon, and we were just like drowned rats, And it was cold, cold. It was starting to really turn cold then. Change of clothes. We had fun sliding anyway. But we used to slide a lot in the, like I said before there, like a slide a lot in the winter time, There's no skidoos or anything then, So the only thing is you had to walk back, when you down there. Well, I'd say a mile and a half anyway, where we'd start it way up above our place and go way down. Good. Some evenings we'd slide there about 3 or 4 times, Walk back up. But you had to make your own fun pretty well, Well, no, I never learned to skate till I was a teenage, because we never had any place to skate, There's no rinks or anything like. There's no even rink in Elmer or anything. We had a place back in the wood, back in what we called the meadow. We used to go back there and skate after I got big enough, when we have to be big enough to walk back there, but it was quite a little walk, And we used to walk there, but we used to slide slide on the road, because you slide in the road at night, because there's never any cars, Wouldn't be a car to go by at night. You could always tell the light when there's cars coming in, if there was any. We always had to go to church, Winter time we went to the horse and sleigh, and summertime we always had a truck, little truck, and always had to go to Sunday school, church and Sunday school, storming or whatever. You always went. Always liked going to church, as that goes. Yeah, we went to church in West River, That was the church still runs there, yeah. Alma's village, yeah. We always went, like, all through the summer. We'd go to Saturday night. Always go down, because the stores then, they're always open Saturday nights, And that was their busiest time, pretty well. Everybody gathered at the village, Get the supplies for the week, What they bought, Well, they didn't buy a lot, Because you raised most everything, All your fruit, all your vegetables and everything, and you pretty well had your own meat most of the time. And flour and sugar. And I remember most winters, Father always bought like a half a dozen bags of flour or more, because every 2 weeks took a 100-pound bag of flour every 2 weeks. So that's what they used to get. And my parents was William and Arletta Hoar. She was a Walton, Arletta Walton, My parents, they were married in September the 10th, I think, of 1924. My mother and father were really good to us. Well, my mother, she always handled the stick home. But my father, he'd never touch us, But our mother could use a stick on us if she had to. Well, well, my father used to drive the van quite a bit, and he worked in the woods, eh? And some years he worked, and others he bid for, to drive the van from Hebron to Alma. He drove it most of the time, and then their neighbor there, George Alcorn, he used to drive. Sometimes he did the job driving. And my mother, she done all kinds of work. Looking after 11 and 10 in lived in the family. That my oldest brother, he died when he was with appendicitis when he was 5. And so there's 10 of us living, and kept her because she used to make a lot of the kids' clothes, and make pants and everything for his boys, knit all the socks. And she had an old treadle sewing machine. She worked it a lot, Yes, she made bread every 6 days a week, and on Saturday she made bread every day other than Sunday, and on Saturday she'd make a batch of brown bread and a batch of white bread. And it took a lot of bread, and there was 6 or 7 kids going to school doing up lunches. But she had plenty of work to do. Quite a bit of activity going on among all the kids, that many kids. My oldest sister was born on August the 18th, 1925. I remember that. The other ones, and the first boy, he's the one that died, Gerald. He's the one that died when he was 5, with appendicitis. He died here in the Riverside Hospital. And I was operated on for appendicitis myself when I was 11, in hospital. They thought I was going to die too, but got infection in. And that you couldn't afford to stay in the hospital very long. It cost $5 a day, and that was a lot of money then, 1942. My other oldest living brother, he'll be 84 on December the 16th. And then there's Frank, then Della, she was next, and then Jean, she and me, and Marilyn, and Sterling, Reggie, George, and Everett. That's the whole shebang. We used to fight it quite a bit. Like I think most all families do. But basically, I think we got along pretty good. We used to play ball a lot, so together. So I just tell me day there, but one time, my father and mother was up in the when made 12 or something like that. And we had some cattle, had quite a few cattle there. My brother and I, we decided we'd hook one up into an express wagon, an old express wagon, and we hooked it up and hooked them up, and we used a harness that was for a driving horse. They didn't have any collar or hames, just a breast strap, and we get that on, and they pulled the thing up in the field. They went to turn around, and I didn't have anything hooked on it to hold the wagon back from running into the. And we run it in, and he jumped ahead, and one of the shafts come out and stuck on the ground, and it broke off, And then the other one dug in into his ribs, and he took off, down through the field, and we ran down after. We couldn't catch him anyway. We couldn't stop. He made into the barn, but he left the wagon in the door, right on, broke the whiffle tray. Different things like that happened, But, another time we was sliding, We were coming down the hill. We used to have two sleds rigged up together, and one person lay on the front sled, and he done the steer now. And then we took our feet in the rope of the sled behind. Anyway, but I was on the back end of the sled this day, and I decided I wanted to get off to go down to the house. The house was about halfway, way up top of the hill, and we'd slide down. I just stepped off that sled. I tell you, I went places. For a few, skinned my face all off. Things like that you never forget. When the first winter I worked out in the woods, I worked in New Ireland all winter, and then I went to Elgin, and the mill sawed the lumber, and I worked in the mill, and when I come home, and I always took my money when I got paid from Mr. Kirchard, and give it to my mother. She kept it all for me, and I had $400 when I come home that spring. Well, I was helping put the crop in at the time, I come up and paid him before we put the crop in. He got a new truck the winter before, he got it just before Christmas. Got a new Fargo truck, And he bought the truck. He paid $1,500 for the truck, And he traded the old truck and we had. And he got $300 out of that, and he gave him $800 besides that he had saved. And that was $1,100, and he still owed $400 on it, $435 what he owed, and he knew that Mom had that money of mine. He coaxed me into, "What do you pay that? Should pay that truck off, He said, "You got $400." That's why I knew he knew I had. And he said, "I'll give you the 35, and you go up and pay or Northrop for the truck we paid." He said, "You drive the truck. You drive it likely more than I will." Of course, every time I took it out, he'd growl because he'd take driving it after. Anyway, I went up, and there was my money gone. Anyway, the very spring, we were working on the driveway there. And the fellow, I'd been up to Moncton with Frank, my brother, and we went to Maritime's used cars looking for. I knew I had no money to buy a car anyway, but I just looked. Anyway, the fellow salesman there, he come down this way, down home way, looking. He had my address there, I guess, because I talked to him when up there buying a car. And he had this nice 39 Chev, just beautiful shape, maroon Chev, And he wanted $700 for it. And boy, I'd love to have ever had that car. If I'd had the Ford, I would have paid I could have bought it, then. Could have bought the car. And if I paid that much on it, I could, I get. Especially my father, who would back a note, like if I did the first car, he did bought it. But anyway, I couldn't buy it. Another fellow over here in Riverside bought it. Richard Elliott is his name. He bought this 39 Chevy. He had that for quite a few years there. Beautiful car, I could have been real proud, at that 39 Chevy car, And it wasn't new. It was certainly that would be in 1947. Yes, 1947. He'd be 8 years old, eh? But just, I think a woman owned it, eh, in Moncton, eh? So the first car I bought there was first old car was a Model A Ford. Oh, a 31 Model A. I'd give $200 for it, eh? And never went anywhere with it. Played with it just down the orchard. I used to get the kids in it, George and Everett, their younger brothers, around through the orchard, see where we could get with it, eh? One time we tried to go back to the meadow, what we called the meadows up above our place up on the hill. Went back and there's just no logging road, eh, tack to it. Went back there and got stuck back there. Broke through the ice, eh? And there we were stuck, eh? I think I had an axe with us. We cut. I'm not sure. Maybe we had to go back and get it. Go back and the stuff to put stuff under the wheels and stuff to get it. Anyway, sometimes you remember of. And started school in 1938, I guess. So pretty near 7, because I wasn't old enough. Then you couldn't start unless you were 6 years old in the 1st of September. And I know, but there was one fellow that started. He was younger, quite a bit younger than I was. He was in our grade, but because they let him in because he was born, I think, a little bit later than I was, but he got in. But we had to travel. First 3 or 4 years that I went to school, we had in the wintertime we had to go by horse and sleigh, eh? And in the spring of the year, we used wagon. Had a van type thing on a sled, long sled, eh? And then in the spring, they put it on a rubber-tired wagon, eh? And it's the first, like when I first started school, like I said, there's the roads weren't plowed in the wintertime. And then they come down in the spring with the tractor type snowplow and open the road up. Well, we always got up at 6 o'clock, eh? Because we had to leave if it was, when I went by horse and wagon, we had to leave home about 20 to 8. School to get 9 took about an hour and 15 minutes or more to go down and pick up the neighbors' kids and get to Elm school time. Yeah. The year that I started school, they had put a top on the school, made 3 rooms. Before that, it was only 2-room school. Then they put a room on the top and it made another room. And that was the year I started school, 1938. School, it went to grade 11. Then it was when kids graduated, but there wouldn't be too many left by the time they got to grade 9. A lot of them had dropped out before that. And, I always liked going to school pretty well. A lot easier work than working on a farm, particularly. And before I got done school, I used to drive the van, take the van, eh? And drive the trucks. I had my license when I was 14, a chauffeur's license. It's called a chauffeur's license. And I think you're really supposed to have somebody with you driving most of the time. But anyway, I used to drive the school van, and I'd go to school, eh? Well, mostly that was mostly with the when I done that, it's mostly with the horse and sled, eh? And I keep the horse in my uncle's barn, take it, put him in, then I go to school, eh? Like there's only 3 families there that really went to school, like there's any had kids to go to school, and we'd go pick up the one beyond our place, and then come back and pick up the other kids home. Because, well, once there's of course, I never drove it when we had 7 of our own going to school, but there's maybe 5 maybe school of ours, and 2, 3 other ones. And then there's a couple along the road. The others 3 or 4 altogether, I guess, along the road that we picked up. And so to give you a van load, before you get to school. I got. I supposed to. I got grades. Went through grade 8. Supposed to start at grade 9, but I was going to drive the van and go to school. So I had the first morning. I had to get the truck fixed. I had to take it to the garage to get the truck fixed. I was supposed to take it there and leave it and go back to school, but I didn't. I went and I stayed down in the garage, talked there, and well, I won't bother going today. And that went on about 3 days. My mother growled every day. Well, because I wasn't going to school. But then I was in the store, and the fellow that ran the store there, Kirstard fella, he offered me a job. Well, I'd worked for him through that summer back in the mill, back in the Fundy Park, where Fundy Park is now. So he offered me a job, wanted me to go back in New Ireland and work in the woods, drive a yarding horse, So anyway, I said, well, seemed to be good through the summer when I got some of my own money, So I decided, I think I'll quit. I told my father I was going to quit. Well, you shouldn't quit. And my mother, she was mad at me for not going to school. But anyway, I went into the woods. I was only 15. And I worked in the woods I just worked for him that year. And then I went with my uncle, and worked for him. And I worked altogether 5 years in the woods, And first 2 years I worked good. I just drove a yard horse, called a yard horse, yarding the logs up. And I the last 2, 3 winters, I guess, we used a crosscut saw. I don't know if you know what a crosscut saw is or not, but I can show you one. I got one too down cellar. But anyway, it's like 2 fellows that saw together, one on each end of it. That's done like the last 3, I guess the last 3 winters. That's what I worked at. I worked in New Ireland there that one winter, but then we worked in back of Fundy Park, where Fundy Park is now. Because we couldn't cut any more lumber in Fundy Park, so we went back beyond that. And then we hauled the first 2 years, we hauled the logs out to Alma, And the second year, I was driving truck then. First year, I just helped load other trucks. Second year, I drove a truck, hauled logs out to Alma, piled them on the Alma pond. And that mill burnt in 1950. I think it was like 50, 51, 50. I think. And then the logs out that year after it burnt when the logs was all there, so he got another mill from Elgin. They moved through to Alma, they sawed long. And I always worked in the mill in the summertime. I worked in the wood in the wintertime. And I drove my uncle's truck summertime delivering wood. They cut all the waste wood from the mill, delivered to around the village of Alma. Well, we'd walk out in the fall, when I first went in there, they'd come back and pick us up. The fellow he had a truck, and he'd bring us out. But we stayed in an old house, camped in an old house back there, and he'd come back and pick us up. But as soon as the snow come, well, he couldn't. Then we walked. I stayed in some weekends. Another fellow, Floyd Sheffer, and I, we'd walk out pretty well every weekend, Well, it was 15 miles altogether, Because there's 12 miles out to Alma, and then there's 3 miles from my place, or to my Alma home, So that's then Sunday, about supper time or so, we'd head back again. Yeah, we've done that all the time. Some other times there's some of the other fellows come with us, but there's a lot of fellows who had 10 fellows in there from Prince Edward Island, Well, that's one reason why this Kirsten fellow wanted me to go back and work for him, because men are a hard job to get in. Men then, their work had started to pick up a lot around. So anyway, I worked in the woods for 5 years, and then I drove truck for a year or two for my uncle. Last summer I drove the truck. That's when I started working at construction work. We worked for Modern Construction. He had the truck hired on with Modern Construction, and I drove it. And that's when I got a job with Modern Construction. I started with them, and I was there for 30 years. I drove truck first, then started running bulldozer. I was just about. I only drove truck, I guess, about 6 months for them, and they wanted the bulldozer operator, so wanted me to learn where to learn. So they put me on a bulldozer. From the morning I started, that night I was going by myself, hauling a carry-all, I call carry-all, big scraper, loading dirt, moving dirt from one. So we run tractor haul carry-all for 2 summers. That's what I do all summer. We worked in Camp Gagetown when they're building Camp Gagetown. I was up there, I guess, 3 years. We was there 3 years. Then we done a lot of work. We built a railway down in Harvey Bushy, Nova Scotia. Building a railroad when they built the causeway at down at All's Cove there. I worked down there for a year, and then I got on down there, and then I went back to the army. I went back up with the army again, or with the Gagetown. Worked up there again for, I guess, all winter. Worked up there all winter, and then and we moved from there to Heath Steel when Heath Steel run in Newcastle way. There, and I was up there for 13 months. We built the railroad into Heath Steel, and was up there for the railroad. Worked there for And I went down to Halifax, worked around a lot of different places. Moved to Halifax and worked down there till they got the Moncton Hump Yard, and we built the Moncton Hump Yard, and it's there for 3 years, and worked most of the time in the winter, or worked when we couldn't work at earthwork and moving, work in the shop, repair machinery. I went over to Newfoundland and worked in 1964. So I was over there for a year. And back here, and we had a lot of work for the government. I worked, you'd be up in Grand Falls maybe for 6 months, worked out there. We built quite a piece of railroad up there in Grand Falls, New Brunswick. And there, went to Dalhousie. Worked, and I back to Halifax again. We worked around Grand Falls and Dalhousie and Halifax 3 or 4 different times. You never stayed anywhere too long, other than like at the Hump Yard. I was there right at the one place there for 3 years there. I moved over 4.5 million yards of material there. I run other stuff some, but I like the dozer right there. I took when they got the biggest tractor it was made then, a D9. Well, I took it when they got it. I was running D8 before that, and I took a D9 and I ran it for 6 years. And then went over to Newfoundland in 64, and I got a new tractor there. And wore out 4 or 5 new tractors over there. But anyway, that's what I done. Worked for Moderns for 30 years, and then they sold out a lot of their heavy equipment. They had a big sale, and work was getting scarce, so then I worked on the paving for 1 year with Modern, and then this supervisor job come up here in Riverside, Albert, and that's when I applied for the supervisor's job here, and I got the job, and I worked there for a little over 13 years for supervisor, road supervisor. Well, we just doing road maintenance, like looking after the snow plow, and in the wintertime, and the summertime putting in culverts and patching. We'd do all of our patching in this area. I had the area in the wintertime from up the Hopewell Cape to Alma. And in the summertime, we went up to the other, pretty near to Hillsborough, in the summertime, to Alma. And that's a lot of different work. They had to keep track of everything, like a lot of paperwork, because you had to make up your payroll. And I used to have, in the wintertime, we used to have usually I think about 8 fellows, 8 fellows with 4 plows and a backhoe, grader. He had seemed to be quite a lot of road to look after, and because you had to get up pretty well every night. You had to get up in the morning at 3 o'clock, 'cause you had to go check your roads, and time you go check them, because it could be snow. It could be blew in down in Waterside, and be quite fine up here, And the roads could be all blew in down there. Same with Memel or some of them in them places, they could be blew in, so traffic couldn't get out, and you had to go, and then you had to call your men in, They had to come in and load the trucks with sand and their salt, whatever you were using. You had to make up your mind whether you should use salt or sand, and how much to use. So it was quite a lot. Oh, it wasn't bad. The only thing, it was home, and was with Mother and his away most of the time, So, I liked it pretty good. You know, it made pretty good money, You worked a lot of, on the go a lot, But it gets tiresome too. All through the winter, getting up at 3 o'clock, And then maybe the night before you'd have to work up to 11, They always wanted you off the road by 11 if you could, So you worked lots of hours, but there's more hours and more money, so. and retired in 1996. I've been retired ever since. Yeah, because we both retired the same day, April 21st, 1996. She retired from the hospital, and I retired from the government. I went out 6 months early. Well, the engineer was there. He was retiring, and I said to him, I might retire myself one day. He said, "Don't blame me a bit." I said, "Yeah." And he was well satisfied with my work. And that's all the time I was there. So. I think the first place I met her, I took her home from church, That was in 1949. Because we went together 4 years before we was married. We were at Edward Steve's, the church. And I took, and I give you a drive home. That was first. Guess it kind of took a liking to her. And I don't know. And then went up, picked you up, and I knew you were working up at Cape Rocks there, or up staying with an old lady, Went up there and picked her up there and went down to the Cape Rocks, and walked around there. I guess that's where it started. You got married in 1953. We were in 53. We got married, married down here at the parsonage, and my sister and brother-in-law stood up with us, And then we went to Petticoat, and then I had just started to work with Mother not very long, and we couldn't get any holidays then. Her holidays had hard to come by. They thought you should be working. That's all the time we had, and we were both back to work Monday morning. Oh, still enjoyed it, I guess. Anyway. Well, we the first winter we stayed with my sister and my brother-in-law. The first winter, and we went to down to Harvey Bushy, in May, 5th day of May, 1954. Because Pamela was born 19th of May. So she stayed with her mother, and then you went back to work. You went back to work with Lamsbury's, and worked till the next winter. We didn't, a year and a half, I think, wasn't it? Because Gareth wasn't born till 56, December 29th, 56. So that they pretty near 2 years, eh? And that next year, that next spring of that's when I went to Gagetown. We moved up to Gagetown for part of that year, eh? And then go back and we stayed with your mother and father that winter. Yeah, just for a little while, and then we rented a house here in Riverside, eh? Up here, we lived there for 2 years, and I bought this place, our home here, in 1958, eh? And we've lived here ever since 1958. You live in a good place in a way. You know, we're quite a ways out of town, but it's still it's a good. It was a good place to bring kids up, eh? For far as that goes, real good place to bring a family up, you know. Really, the only one that was ever, when I was home, the only one that was ever born when I was home was Donald Wayne, eh? And he was born here in Riverside, eh? And I was home. I was off that winter for a couple of months, eh? I wasn't working, eh? So I just happened to be home when he was born. That's February 1958, eh? Here, we had six children. In 9 years, eh? So, but I wasn't home very much. Way most of the time. The first one, Pamela was born in May of 1954, May 19th. Gareth was born in December 1950, 29th of December. 1956, and Kathy was born 19th of December 1955. So one Christmas we had one child, and the next Christmas we had three. And I used to tell people that all the time at work. Oh, you had twins then? I said, no. Well, where'd you have a child somewhere else? No, I said, so I had to tell them one was born on December 29th, and then another was born on the 19th, eh? So, and then Don Wayne, Kathy was born in December 19th, 1955. Don Wayne was born in February 1958, February the 10th, 1958. Vern was born on August the 19th, 1961. Phyllis was born in October 25th, 1963. So that's the whole family. And I was the only one, Donald Wayne was the only one that I was home with when somebody had taken her to the hospital. When Gareth was born, I stayed home from work. I was working in Gagetown. I stayed home one Monday and went and picked you up and brought you home. Then I headed to Gagetown in a snowstorm. I had to go around by Moncton, around by St. John. And it snowed. And I was sure I wasn't going to get up a couple of hills up there along St. John River. But I made them get up. Well, I hated to do it. I hated to go to Newfoundland. When I went there, I didn't mind sitting too bad the first time. But when I come home, they used to bring us home every 2 months. They'd fly us home, eh? But boy, I hate to go back the second time. Yeah. But and it's the second time after I went back. Second time when I went back there. I'm not going to stay. I'm going to get out of here. So, but just I'll wait. Yeah. I mean, they're making good money. She was the maybe looked after everything, then paid all the bills and everything. And well, my checks just come home here, eh? And they paid us $4 a day, just for spending for living allowance, eh? Every day we were over there, we got $4 a day, eh? And that's the money I had, eh? But they flew us back. It didn't cost anything to fly back and forth. But I said, then I went back the second time. I'm not going to stay. I'm going to get out of here. So they went from day to day, and after a while, to get back on track again. And but I used to hate what I used to hate in the wintertime. We were traveling a long ways away, and Dalhousie, for one place. We traveled up there, but it seemed to be every Sunday night when you'd head back there, it'd be snowing, snowstorms, eh? Same way in Halifax, eh? And Grand Falls. One night, the fellow Sidney Collins and I left here. We should have left earlier in the day than we did. It's a long ways. It's 250 miles from here to the boarding house in Grand Falls. We get to Fredericton. We're just halfway there, eh? And it snowed. It snowed pretty near all the way. It didn't snow hard, but just enough to make it good and slippery, eh? All the way up there, eh? Yeah, that makes a long drive when you drive 250 miles. But yeah, for them to get as much education as they can, and that's one thing. One thing we really stressed ours. They really wanted to do the things themselves anyway. They were more or less the ones they wanted to go. All the ones, three engineers in the family, and Pamela went. She only went to college 1 year, but she took courses afterwards, and she's worked in the bank now for how many years? She had a lot of years in the bank. And one electrical engineer and a civil engineer and a chemical engineer, and then one granddaughter dentist, and one grandson is a chemical engineer too. Shade, and they all got pretty good education, and they done it themselves. We didn't get, and they didn't really practically hardly owed anything when they got through college either. 'Cause we were making too much money. We didn't make all that much money, but still we made too much. They couldn't get government loans, eh? So they hardly owed any money at all, eh? I think last year Phyllis was on, she got a little bit of money, but wasn't very much. And so we pretty well had to pay all their education, eh? Mabel worked, she used to get loans every semester for them for college, eh? Get money from the bank, and then she started working, pay that back. Time she got it paid back, she had to get another loan. And I looked after everything else, buying everything else, but she looked after that, take most of her wages, stay for the college and for the kids that was in college. Yeah. It never caused us any trouble, you know. They had a real good family, yeah. You always worried for them about them when they're out as far as that goes, but I guess that's life. Well, I really never had much for hobbies, eh? Never had, never had any hobbies. But yeah, after we retired, well, we went some. I guess maybe I was still working. Maybe when we took the trip down to Pennsylvania, wasn't I? We both were working, eh? We took quite a few bus trips, eh? And, down to Pennsylvania there once, and then we was down to Halifax the time, around Cape Breton. Twice around Cape Breton, I think, didn't we? And Graham and Ann, and a little bit of Fredericton. It was a few bus trips. But I used to walk right now. Well, I walked right up to, I guess, walked right up till this year. Like last winter, I walked quite a bit, and walking around, but it keeps me busy all just doing my own work. Now you cut my own wood and do that, and get wood, and always have a big, ever since we retired, had quite a big garden, eh? You look after that, and quite a lot bit of lawn to mow, we do all that, and then go to Moncton once a week, eh? That takes one day. And I used to first cousin there, I used to drive her quite a bit to the doctor and to run errands for her and everything. Go to church on Sundays. But I never got it. We played shuffleboard there one year for quite a while, and then everybody dropped out of it. So a lot of the stuff that you start, that's the same way of walking. There'd be some start walk and then they keep dropping off, and you'd end up maybe just 2 or 3, eh? Well, I guess, I didn't have a bad life. I couldn't say I had a bad life or anything. Could have been a lot easier, well, you knew you had to work try to make as much money as you could. And it took it all to keep your family, Not too many things had changed, not like that. Only thing I know, if I had to do over again, I would finish high school. Because I kind of liked high school. I liked school, but I just like to earn some money. Just want to have a little money to spend, Maybe wouldn't have went any further. Tried to educate myself some since I left school, But I guess we had a pretty good life as far as I go. Didn't have too much sickness, so maybe but there, 2008, she said it's quite a stay in the hospital, 2 months, but she made it through cancer. She's been pretty good ever since. Yes, I'm pretty near 80 years old now, and my father died. He's 75, and I thought he was old, but I'm 5 years older now. The doctor, he tried to tell me I was a young 80, eh? So I don't feel that young all the time.